application stating that within 90 days that the person has passed away and that they are the legal heirs?
Yes, perfectly right. Because mean profit also you file a suit, no, isn't it? Normally in a suit for a possession of a property from a trespasser or from a tenant after determination of tenancy or from a licensee of a determination of a license, you include a prayer with regard to not only possession and also mean profit. Okay. In a mean profit, normally the court doesn't pass a decree immediately. No? It passes a preliminary decree or a direction that an inquiry under Order 20, Rule 12, CB instituted. The court may say that the plaintiff has proved that he is the owner of the property, defendant is a trespasser, he has no right title interest. So the suit is decreed in terms of prayer A, namely that the defendant be ordered and decreed to quit, vacate, hand over possession and to the same to the plaintiff within a period of 3 months, 6 months time or after the expiration of the appeal period. As regards prayer B, namely mean profits are concerned, an inquiry under Order 20, Rule 12C be instituted. Mansi, can you please open Order 20, Rule 12C? Got it? Decree for possession and mean profit. Kindly see that. Suit for recovery of possession of immovable property for rent and mean profit. Number 1, decree for possession. B, rents. B, A, C, directing an inquiry as to rent or mean profit from the institution of the suit until delivery of possession. So this is the court normally passes. This you may call it a preliminary decree or a direction and not a full-fledged decree. That means the plaintiff is given liberty to prove this mean profit by leading evidence of his experts. Who are the experts? Your land valuer, your architects, or your estate agents in the locality to show that the market value of the property is this much. The last sale took place so much per square feet. I am entitled to, if it is a Colaba area, 1 lakh rupee per square feet. This was the last sale took place. So this you have to examine an expert. Okay. The provisions of the CPC apply to mean profit also as it apply to possession. Okay, is that clear?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yes. So the next, please, we were dealing with how the provisions of section 12 is also the principle analogous to res judicata applicable to proceeding under Order 22, Rule 9. So I explained to you the concept under Order 22. Order 22, when a plaintiff or defendant dies, you have to bring the application within 90 days under Article 120 of the Limitation Act. Otherwise, the provisions of 22 clearly say that the suit abates. That you will find out that you see the provision abatement take place. Kindly see where it abates. Order 22, Rule 9 check करें आप. Okay, when I deal with this provision, I will take it here. Under Order 22, Rule 9, abatement take place when the application is not filed. Abatement can be set aside only under Section 5 application. When, for example, here application for setting aside abatement is not made, your suit has been abated, you will not be, please see Order 22, Rule 9. Effect of abatement or dismissal is very important. where a suit abates or is dismissed under this order, no suit shall be brought on the same cause of action. See, this is analogous to the provisions of Order 2, Rule 2. This is also analogous to the provisions of Section 47. No separate suit would lie. This is also analogous to Section 95 subclause 2 in the CPC, that you cannot file a separate suit for claiming damages. Isn't it? Similarly, under Order 2, Rule 2. Then under Order 9, Rule 9 also, when a suit is dismissed for non-appearance, you cannot file a separate suit. So these are all principle analogous to res judicata, falling within the ambit of Section 10-9. So Order 22, Rule 9 clearly says that here, when the suit is abated and you have not taken steps, plaintiff or defendant, second suit would not lie. That doesn't mean that you have no legal remedy. You have a remedy, namely take out application in the same pending suit. Invoke the provisions of Section 5 of the Limitation Act. Explain the delay as to what prevented you. This is with a view to avoid multiplicity of proceeding, to see that the time of the court is not wasted and your time is not wasted. Okay, this is yet another example. Is this provision clear? Anybody wants to ask me any question? Now next, please open Order 23, Rule 1. Order 23, Rule 1, 4B. Now Order 23 deals with withdrawal of the suits. And I mentioned to you that civil suit can be withdrawn by the plaintiff at any time. There are two types of withdrawal. Plain withdrawal unconditionally without the leave of the court. The court will not question you. But if you want to withdraw the present suit and file a separate suit on the same cause of action, you must obtain the leave of the court under Order 23, Rule 3. If the leave is not obtained, you will not be permitted to file a fresh suit. Kindly see Order 23, Rule 1, subclause 4, check kare aap. Where the plaintiff abandoned the suit part of the claim or withdraw the suit without permission, he shall be liable for the cost. Court may award, shall preclude him from instituting any fresh suit. Order 23, Rule 1, subclause 4, B. Fresh suit in respect of the subject matter of such part of the claim. This is again the principle analogous to res judicata under Section 12. You cannot file two suits having withdrawn the earlier suit without permission. Similarly, you cannot file a second suit having not clubbed all the reliefs in one suit. When the relief of mean profit available to you at the time of the filing of the suit for recovery of possession, you are relinquished that mean profit under Order 2, Rule 2 without the leave of the court. So the condition is that you must obtain the leave. At the time of the filing, you are relinquishing your claim, obtain the leave for filing a suit. When you are withdrawing a suit, you want to file a suit on the same cause of action, you should apply for leave. Okay?
So can you give an example where, how do you abandon a part of the claim in the suit?
Abandon, for example, you filed the suit and at the time of the recording of the evidence, you have not come before the court. Abandon, gone. Number two, you come and withdraw the suit and go away.
No, so a part of it, how do you abandon? It says abandon part of claim.
Part of it, say you may tell the court, I am not pressing prayer B of the plaintiff. Prayer B is mean profit. while arguing during when the time the court framed the issues, your advocate makes a submission after consulting you. Sir, I am only confining the relief of possession. I am not claiming for mean profit. Okay. Once you have given up this claim during the trial, after some time, when the present suit is dismissed or decreed, after 2 years, you go to new advocate, your client, he cannot file a new suit because you have abandoned this particular prayer B. You are given up voluntarily before the court.
Thank you, sir.
Understood? That is the ground. So this is broadly, there are about 12 circumstances in the Code of Civil Procedure Code which fall within the ambit of Section 12. Okay. Section 10 dealt with the provisions of stay of suit. Stay of suit can be invoked when there are two parallel suits. Two parallel suits filed at the same time by the same parties in the same court or different court. So the object of law is two suits are not permissible because it amounts to multiplicity of proceeding and two different courts giving two conflicting judgment, two appeals is an erroneous proposition. Nahi karo. Section 10(11) speaks of a case where a decree has been passed already in one suit. Second suit on the same cause of action would not lie. Suppose your grandfather had filed a suit against defendant for possession, which was dismissed. After the death of the grandfather, you cannot file a second suit, the same person on the same ground. It may, on a different ground, you may file it. On the same ground, you cannot say that he is a trespasser, he should be dismissed. He doesn't have a legal right. So that is the analogy before under the provisions of Section 11, and Section 12 also restricts you, gives you 10 to 12 examples from the Code of Civil Procedure Code, the principles as to how the second suit is barred, the principle analogous to the provisions of res judicata. Is that clear? Now I'm coming to Section 13. Now when a foreign judgment is conclusive, when is not. Section 13 and 14 deal with let us start reading the section 13. I will read it. A foreign judgment shall be conclusive as to any matter thereby directly indicate upon them between the same parties or between parties under whom any of them claim litigating under the same title, except where it has been pronounced by a court of competent jurisdiction. It has not been given merits of the case. Now, the illustrations given are A, B, C, which are analogous to the provisions of Limitation Act in Section 47. Please note that under the Arbitration Act, if you open provisions of Section 46, when foreign award is binding, then under Section 57, condition for enforcement of foreign awards, Arbitration Act. So you will learn here under the arbitration, you must be learning the Geneva Convention, New York Convention, because the present Arbitration Act contains domestic arbitration as well as international arbitration. Because formerly in India, there used to be 3 arbitration acts. One was a domestic arbitration. You all will be knowing it here. A domestic arbitration dealing with the Indian Arbitration Act. Then international arbitration ke liye, you must be aware of the fact that here there were 2 arbitration. Convention on the recognition of enforcement of foreign awards. That is, the 2 acts have been repealed. Formerly, Arbitration Protocol Convention Act of 1937, that was dealing with Geneva Convention. Then foreign awards, recognition, enforcement of the Enforcement Act of 1961. Both are repealed under Section 85 of the Arbitration Act. So they have clubbed into one together. Now these provisions of Geneva Convention or New York Convention are also brought into picture under section 13 and 14. You may call it private international law. You may be aware of it here. Suppose there are many Indian citizens who marry outside India, in UK or foreign countries, and they file a suit, one of them in Bombay. What is the effect of a judgment and decree passed in that court? So in what circumstances a decree becomes conclusive? Now the decree becomes conclusive only, number one, where it has been passed by a court of competent jurisdiction. The court must have jurisdiction. If the court is lacking jurisdiction in the foreign country, the decree is void. The decree can be challenged. Normally, when a decree is passed under, for example, under the Geneva Convention or New York Convention, or in a private litigation under the international law in a foreign country, that decree is brought to India, that execution proceeding will start in the Bombay High Court. Bombay High Court can question whether the decree passed by that foreign court is competent court, whether the law with regard to substantive law of India is followed or not. So, if a Hindu Marriage Act decree of divorce has been passed, whether the decree passed is following the principle laid down under the Hindu Marriage Act. Whether the decree is passed under the Indian Contract Act relating to frustration of a contract, whether section 56 are followed or not. That is how it is done here. If a competent court must pass a decree, number one, where it has been passed on merits of the case. So ex parte judgments are not binding. Kindly note that. Ex parte means only one person has been heard, not on merits, and you can challenge the decree. The court is not bound to execute a decree in Bombay. Now, thirdly, C speaks of where it appears on the face of the proceeding to be found incorrect view of international law relating to recognized law of India in case such law. So you have to follow the substantive law of India. I gave you an example in a matrimonial cases, you have to follow. If the Hindu parties are going for a divorce under the law, if you take that the marriage was performed in a temple, whether that Satpatna, what is 7 steps were followed before the fire has taken place, or in a case of adoption, custom has followed or not, these are to be followed. That is the substantive law of India. If the substantive law of India is not followed, then the decree is bad. Then the fourth example is here, where the proceedings in which judgment obtained are opposed to natural justice. Natural justice is the principles of audi alteram partem, which you learn in the administrative law. No person can be heard, can be condemned without being heard. So it is at least elementary that here the other person must be given sufficient opportunity of filing written statement, a sufficient opportunity to cross-examine the witnesses. You just cannot close the evidence on the day when examination chief is filed. The judge cannot say that here in a foreign court, the plaintiff has filed the examination chief today, I recorded evidence, he is absent, cross-examination decline. That kind of order is erroneous. So a full opportunity must be given. The judge must say that today evidence in examination chief is closed and the defendant is not present by way of abundant caution with a view to meet the principles of natural justice and to meet the ends of justice. An opportunity is given to defendant to cross-examine the witness on the next date of hearing. I am therefore granting 15 days time or 20 days time with a direction to the plaintiff to give intimation to the other party. If it is only when the intimation is not complied with, the court passes an order, proceed with the matter of the case. And finally, where the decree has been obtained by fraud vitiates almost all transaction, you know that. Now this particular fraud aspect you will find section 44 of the Evidence Act. Can you please open Mansi section 44 of the Evidence Act? See, section 41, 42, 43 are very important under the Evidence Act. They deal with the fact that here, now when the foreign judgment become conclusive. Now under the Evidence Act, first I will tell you the expression conclusive you will find in section 4. Please can you open before section 44, section 4 mein jaiye. Section 4 that deals with may presume, shall presume and conclusive evidence. Now, when you go to the court of law, after pleadings are completed, when evidence start, the court will presume certain facts are correct. That examples you will find under section 114 of the Indian Evidence Act, may presume. Shall presume will cover from section 79 onwards. And the cases with regard to conclusive evidence, which is used in section 14, foreign judgment is conclusive. You will find in section 41 of the Evidence Act. A judgment of the matrimonial court, judgment of the probate court, a judgment of the insolvency court, they're all conclusive. That means, what conclusive means, you will not be permitted to lead evidence to prove that they are fraudulent. Normally in the case of may presume, you have a liberty to lead evidence to prove a fact it is wrong. In the case of shall presume also, you can rebut the evidence. But if the court declares that particular fact is conclusive, so here under section 13 of the Evidence Act, a foreign judgment is presumed to be conclusive except on the 4 grounds. So you will not be permitted to challenge it here. You cannot file a suit in Bombay High Court for a declaration that the decree is not binding upon me unless it is not covered by clause number A, B and C of section 13. So when a fraud vitiates under section 44, please open section 44 again. 44, see that here, fraud or collusion in obtaining a judgment is not binding. That fraudulent aspect can be challenged by you by filing a separate suit. This section permits here, file a separate suit and challenge it here. Okay?
So 6 minutes are left.
Yeah, I'm coming. Then D, where the proceedings in which the judgment were obtained are opposed to natural justice. Natural justice is again that you have not been heard, other side has not participated, could not file written statement, writ of summons were not properly served, and he was not given the opportunity to cross-examine the witnesses, or he was not given the opportunity to lead his evidence, or he had no opportunity to rebut his evidence. Then in such a cases, the decree is bad. Then E, of course, I dealt with the case of fraud. Then F, where it sustains a claim found on the breach of law in force in India. So substantive law in India must be followed by a foreign judgment in a case between an Indian and a foreigner. When you file a suit or proceedings in a foreign court, either maybe an arbitration proceeding or a suit in an international law or conflict of law, and see to it that here, that the provisions with regard to the Indian law are followed. If the breach is committed, that decree is not binding in an Indian court. That decree can be challenged. That can be challenged by the parties under section 41 on the ground that decree is not binding. But here there is no bar and filing a separate suit also. Okay. Then the last section is section presumption as to foreign judgment. The court shall presume upon the protection of a document purported to be a certified copy of a foreign judgment. Such judgments are produced by a court of competent jurisdiction unless contrary appears on the record, but presumption may be displaced by proving a wrong jurisdiction. Now, section 74 of the Evidence Act tells you what are public documents. A public document need not be proved. Please see that public document. a judgment and decree certified copy of the foreign court under section 14 of the CPC falls within the ambit of section 79 of the Evidence Act. See that the documents, public documents, document record of the sovereign authority, official bodies and tribunal. Section 74 subclause 2 में आएगा, 1 subclause 2 में, there are tribunals are public documents. You need not examine those officers to prove a document. A certified copy is brought, it is sufficient for the purposes to prove that before the court of law, it's a public document. Yeah, these are the various examples under the provisions of the Code of Civil Procedure as well as the Indian Evidence Act relating to the foreign judgment and decree. Now, anybody has any question, please ask me, because
3 minutes are left. 2 minutes are left now.
2 minutes may I can give a chance to the student to ask me question. So we have covered section 10, 11, 12, 13 and 14.
Good morning, sir.
Yeah, good morning.
Regarding the of amicus curiae and commissions, it is in the writ petitions, it is generally not the practice, but can it be prayed for in case there is a writ petition in which there is gross, very serious allegations being made on either side, and the truth needs to be found out. In such a case, can the court appoint amicus or a commission?
Court may appoint amicus curiae. Hello, what is your query? I didn't understand. Hello, please.
Court, yes, sir. Can I be heard, sir?
Now I can hear you. Now, please. Yeah. Now, what is the query?
In a writ petition, can the court appoint an amicus or a commissioner to ascertain the truth where there are serious allegations on either side? And the suit involves something to do with public service.
In a writ petition or a suit?
Writ petition, sir. Writ petition.
Writ petition is not a suit. Writ powers under Article 227 of the Constitution of India or extraordinary jurisdiction under the for invoking your fundamental rights under Chapter 3 and also for striking the administrative orders. Normally, disputed question of law and fact cannot go in writ petition. Please note that. But at the same time, it cannot be said the writ court has no jurisdiction. The writ court is at liberty to invoke the jurisdiction under Article 226. Court can definitely appoint amicus curiae. I mean, normally the friend of a court, a senior advocate is appointed if a question of law is involved. If somebody petition is being argued by a layman or a junior advocate who is not familiar with complicated procedure, court may appoint an amicus curiae to assist the court. In many matters, it has happened. Now, as regard the commissions are concerned, the court has power to appoint commission because we have mentioned that the provisions of CPC are applicable to the writ petition in many cases. Withdrawal applies, commissioner applies. I gave you under Order 18, Rule 18, the court itself can see in Bombay High Court when a petition was made that Chowpatty was being polluted. Justice Ajit Shah and his companion judge visited the Chowpatty in a writ petition. So they acted as commissioners for elucidating the subject matter of the dispute, namely whether the beach is polluted or not, whether the ecological imbalances are well maintained or not. So there is no bar. The court has full power, even the writ court. Yes? Anybody question?
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Or any further question, please? Today we close this topic and more or less we are covered. And so far as section 15, 16, 20, 90, we have jurisdiction dealt with already and interlocutory orders. And we'll cover tomorrow, if in case we have covered the various provision and as to how to file appeal, revisions that I will take. Execution, there are many chapters, you remind me. I think I will start one by one. Okay. Execution, I may take a lot. And I think since we have completed this suit part and the decree also we have completed, I will take up the provisions of appeals. Now filing of appeal certified copies. Next topic will be, that is on Wednesday. Anybody has any questions so far, please ask me. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Ashish here.
Time has finished.
So Ashish, is the application, is that an expensive process, or is it like a routine process, like if the person passes away, is it like any other application?
The court fee is payable 10 rupees on the application. How much? Just 10 rupees. Take out a small application to bring the heirs and record. Application for injunction is 10-20 rupees. That's not much.
Okay.
Applications are not very expensive under the Bombay Court Fees Act. Even suit for injunction, you have to pay only 1,000 rupees. Only suit for recovery of money and property, maximum court fees is 3 lakh rupees. It may vary from, there's a degree. When you go and see the Bombay Court Fees Act, schedule check kare mil jayega uske andar aapko. Matrimonial cases 12 rupees 50, and ladies are exempted. There's a rebate provision under the Bombay Court Fees Act. Women are not liable to pay. Distressed persons are not liable to pay. Even indigent person can file a suit. Even if you don't have money, come before the court under Order 33. My lord, I don't have court fees to pay at the moment. Permit me to file a suit. It's permitted. Courts are liberal. Courts like to see that ultimately justice is done to the parties. Substantive justice is done to the parties. Courts are not technical about money. But only as a young lawyer, you should know how to invoke the provision, press the provision. A person comes to you with a big property, 100 crore, 10 crore. He doesn't have money at the moment. He has become pauper in a famine, in this pandemic, no business. And try and help him out. Tell the court, at the moment, I am not in a position to pay the court fees. I undertake to pay when I generate money. My suit is getting time barred. I may be allowed to file the suit as an indigent person. Invoke the provisions of Order 33. Okay? And give an undertaking. I undertake to pay the court fees later on. Courts are liberal. Courts are never harsh, because court believes in substantial justice must be done and not stick to the strict principles of law. Ultimately, justice must be done to the parties. Not only justice is done, seen to have been done.
Yes, sir.
Or anybody has any question? Yes. Today's topic is clear now. Please, section concept under section 10, section 11, 12. That is a res judicata, sub judice, and principle analogous to res judicata. And constructive res judicata. These are the expressions used. Please kindly open your book, open your commentary, and read it. Come to know, read some Supreme Court judgment, one or two, couple of them. When you go on the net and open it, you will come to know the judgments. It's not a big deal nowadays to find judgment. In our days, it was difficult. Nowadays, very easy for you. Go in the Google and say that I would like to have a current judgment of the Supreme Court under section 11, 12, 13. Milega aapko. All judgments, you will find it. What topic you want me to take next lecture? Mansi, any idea?
So you said you will be doing appeals. That is so fine.
Appeal se pehle are there any interim orders and left out? No, na? Okay, I will take up the appeals. Section 96 as well as Order 41. How to draft the appeal and also limitation bhi cover karenge uska, and how the appellate court acts, how stay is granted, stay of execution is granted. Wo sab deal karenge. Okay? In between, in case we have left out some interim orders, those also I'll cover. Please. Because I will check the CPC. In case we have left out anything, you please message me and tell. And let the student watch the YouTube for repetition and go and write it out. And the lectures are being put on the YouTube. Okay. Okay. Good day then, all of you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Good day.